So, for those in attendance, good evening. Thank you for coming out this evening. Tonight, we're going to be discussing the Donelson Hermitage Old Hickory Community Plan. And before I go on any further, there are actually two plan amendments associated with this community plan. The first one is going to be the case number is 2023 CP 014 001. That is John Hager Road. And the other one is 2023 CP 014 002, and that is going to be for Stewart's Ferry Pike. So for those of you who may have gotten a notice that has just the last three numbers 001, don't be alarmed. They're all the same thing, just got different case numbers assigned. Right, so let me go ahead and start sharing my screen here.
Corey, do you mind if I give a little context?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And first of all, everybody, I know there's some people that are on the phone that will not be able to see Mr. Clark's slides. The meeting is being recorded, and so will that be something that will be available for residents to view afterward, Corey, or is that something that you just keep for your records?
No, ma'am, this is being recorded. Then afterwards, this will be uploaded to the Metro Nashville Plan Department's YouTube channel for.
Okay, perfect. So once that is uploaded to YouTube, I'll make sure to put that on my Facebook page, and then I'll also share it in my newsletter on Monday. But just to give you all some context about why we're here. So there was some legislation that Metro Council passed that enabled us to make a request of Metro Planning to look at the community plan for our area in certain spots. So we couldn't open it and say, hey, reevaluate all of Donelson, Hermitage, Old Hickory. But if there were certain areas that we had questions about or concerns about, we could bring those to planning, and then they would review those areas. So there were two for our area that I asked planning to take a look at, which is what Mr. Clark's going to talk about. One is John Hager Road at Earhart Road, and the other is Stewart's Ferry Pike. John Hager Road at Earhart Road, you'll hear about the specific type of foundation plan of Nashville Next and the community character manual that's called Neighborhood Center. And so you'll hear more about that. But basically, there was a developer who was interested in property that was on the side of John Hager as you're headed into Mount Juliet, where there's the farmland and the home that was converted, or the barn that was converted into a home, and those kinds of things. He was looking at some property over there and found it interesting that we had Neighborhood Center as the designated spot or designated plan for that side. And it didn't make a lot of sense to him. And so that's kind of one reason why I wanted planning to take a look at this. And then the other area is Stewart's Ferry Pike. And in particular, because of the increased focus around the natural resources that are off of Stewart's Ferry Pike, in particular, Cook Recreation Area, all the TWRA property, the proximity to the lake. It's a very unique street. And so I asked planning to take a look at it, because to me, it's unlike a lot of the Hermitage area because it has that mixture of farmland and proximity to the lake, and it felt more rural to me than some of the other parts of the District 12 community. So that's really why we're here. It's my initiation with planning as a result of this legislation. This is not the only meeting that we have to have about this, because I know some residents expressed concern about it being virtual. And so Mr. Clark did agree to doing an in-person meeting. I'll just have to work with him on scheduling a date and a location. So just wanted everybody to be aware of that as well. And with that, I'll stop talking and turn it back over to Corey Clark.
All right, thank you for those words there, Council Member Evans. And also joining us tonight is Anita McKeag. She's a senior planner with the Community Plans Division. Anita, you want to say any words?
Oh, just welcome everybody. Yeah, and let you get right to it. Yeah, I'm here to help Corey take some notes, listen in.
All right. All right. So without further ado, let me go ahead and share my screen here with everyone. Bear with me here. Can you guys see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
All right. So here we go. Okay, so now we have introductions out the way. So tonight on our agenda, we're going to have the purpose of this meeting, some background information. We're going to talk about a little policy and zoning and the requested community character policy. Then at the end, I will open the floor up for questions and discussion. So let's jump right into it. So the first one we're going to talk about is why are we meeting? And I think as the council member kind of laid it out here, we're going to discuss the first case we're going to discuss is John Hickory Road, and that's to change the community character policy, or as we like to say, land use policy for various properties along John Hickory Road and Earhart Road, located east and south of Blue Jay Court and Button Quail Court. And if you're looking at the map right now, you see the red outline area. That is the focus of our discussion tonight. And so we're going to talk about the proposed changes, kind of explain the process, gather your feedback. And then what happens after that, I make recommendations and take that to the Metro Planning Commission for this plan amendment. So this right here is what you're seeing right here. This is an aerial view of the area. And to the right, the far right, the yellow area, that is Wilson County. And to the left there, you see the yellow border. That is the area that we're discussing tonight. And it kind of gives you an overall aerial view, kind of lets you get your situational awareness where everything is located and how it looks from up top looking down, and the areas that are going to be affected, that are affected. And so this is just another view. It's kind of at a different slant, and this is taken off of Google Earth, and this just kind of shows a different perspective of the area as well. You can see like the vegetation. You can see the subdivision there where it's Button Court and Blue Jay Court, how that all fits into the context of the area. And also, again, all the way to the right in the yellow shaded area, that is going to be Wilson County. And so the second part that we're going to be talking about also is, and this is going to be kind of redundant as well. This is Old Hickory. I'm sorry, Stewart's Ferry Pike properties for various properties along Stewart's Ferry Pike. And this is going to be located between Old Hickory Boulevard and west of Earhart Road. And the red outline area, that is, that's the proposed study area. And let me stick a pin in it right here and stop and say that I got a few calls from residents asking me about the actual plan amendment, and I came up with the boundary is basically based off of addresses that are listed to Stewart's Ferry Road, Stewart's Ferry Pike. That being said, we're here to discuss maybe add more properties if need be or whatnot. So I don't want people to be alarmed like this is kind of set in stone right here. But this is, again, these red boundaries that you're seeing, this is just based off of address or properties who have a listed address of Stewart's Ferry Pike. And again, giving you like an aerial view, this is where you can kind of see the development and development pattern and whatnot, the houses. You got subdivisions along Stewart's Ferry Pike there to the kind of close to the Old Hickory Boulevard. If you're looking north, you can see also some more subdivisions as well. So again, it's just trying to get everyone that's attended tonight oriented to what you're seeing here. And we're going to show you another view here. Is this more of a slanted where you get to see a little bit more. And again, you can see how the affected area, how it kind of fits into the landscape and whatnot. You can see, I guess everybody knows where the lake is and whatnot. Again, over to the far right is going to be Wilson County as well. And so just kind of give a little background here about community plan Nashville. Metro Nashville Plan Department, we use community plans as a means of applying the Nashville Next plan, which is a countywide long-range plan. Within this plan, there are 14 community plans, each tailored to the issues and needs of their respective communities. And these community plans, they guide where development and preservation should occur in each community. And so in order to implement the vision, establishing these 14 community plans, we use what's called the Community Character Manual. This is like a Bible for us here in the plan in the community plan section where we kind of go to it when we have to reference land use policies and how to apply them and whatnot. And each one, as I said, they contain community character policies that address the form and character of development. It should be noted that every property in Nashville has a community character policy attached to it. And so, as I just said, we have 14 community plans here in Nashville County. I'm sorry, in Davidson County. So the one we're focusing on tonight is Donelson, Hermitage, Old Hickory. And this is just kind of letting you see like the boundaries and what it looks like and whatnot. And so you can see it is a very large area. It's located in the eastern portion of Davidson County. It's bordered on the west by Spence Lane, the Cumberland River to the north, Wilson County line to the east, which I spoke about a little while ago, and Percy Priest Lake, Couchville Pike, and I-40 to the south. And just for reference, this community plan area is 55 square miles in size, and it is roughly 11% of the land area in Davidson County. For those of you who may want those little trivial facts there. And so we also have what's called the Transact, and this guides the various development patterns of Nashville and Davidson County. And to the left there, the image that you see, that is T1, which is natural, goes all the way down to T6, which is the most intense. And so where we are going to be talking about is T3 right there, kind of in the middle, and that's a suburban transit. And this transit is kind of designed to be like a thoughtful bridge from least dense natural and rural environments to dense urban environments and so forth. And this is what you're looking at as a community character policy map. And this map is what you will see all over Davidson County. But in this particular image, you see this is the one that's for the Donelson Hermitage Old Hickory Community Plan. As you can see, there are a multitude of character policies that are associated with this community plan. And if you look down to the bottom right there, you'll see like some circles, dash circles. Those are the areas that we are focusing on, or the community plan amendment areas. That's where they're located in relation to the community plan area. And so why are policies important? They're important because they guide rezoning requests. If a zoning request is measured by the existing policy, there's a higher likelihood the planning commission will approve it. However, if the request is not supported by the existing policy, the Metro Planning Commission is unlikely to recommend. Sorry, apologize, I'm getting ahead of myself, y'all. So, grab it here. So this kind of breaks it down even further, planning versus zoning. What's the difference? I like to think of it as land use policy. That is like the guidance or the vision for an area. Zoning is the law, controls physical development and the use, density, setbacks, parking, access, so forth and so on. So that being said,
Hey, Corey. It's Anita. Your audio is kind of coming in and out. Can you try talking into the microphone a little bit more?
yep, I will. Thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry about that, y'all. So let me say this right now. There is no zone change whatsoever associated with this. I know that was kind of abbreviated process, breaking down the process of how we go about with our zone change requests. But in this instance, and for these two plan amendments, there are no zone change requests associated with this. And so first off, we're going to talk about John Hay Road. So what you're seeing right here is kind of the policy map. Again, the orange area and the red border, that is the affected area that we're going to be discussing, or that we're looking at changing the policy for. And surrounding that, bold dark layers there, you can see the other community character policies that surround this area. And so the existing policy, which is suburban neighborhood center, and the intent behind this is to enhance and create suburban neighborhood centers that are compatible with the general character of suburban neighborhoods as characterized by the service area, development pattern, building form, land use, and the associated public realm. And now the requested policy is suburban neighborhood evolving. And the intent behind this policy is to create and enhance suburban neighborhoods with the best qualities of classic suburban neighborhoods, which are greater housing choice, connectivity, and more creative, innovative, and environmentally sensitive development techniques. So kind of a breakdown, just kind of between these two policies that I have highlighted in red here or outlined in red. Neighborhood center, more suitable for creating pedestrian and bicycle oriented services to meet some of the needs of surrounding neighborhoods within a 5-minute drive. So think of having like a little strip mall or plaza right there plop down, and you can kind of get in your car and drive like 5 minutes to go pick up a gallon of milk or a carton of eggs or something. That's kind of like a neighborhood center. Whereas the suburban neighborhood evolvement, that is anticipated to be developed in suburban residential patterns, but at higher densities and with greater housing variety than your classic suburban neighborhoods. And T3NC air policy is applicable to areas that are zoned, used, or intended to be used as commercial and mixed use and situated to serve suburban neighborhood, and where the center's intensification is supported by the surrounding existing residential development. Sorry about that. And suburban neighborhood evolving, that is more applicable to areas that have where there's an express interest in the evolving development pattern of the area to promote a greater mixture of housing types. And so the next one we're going to talk about is Stewart's Ferry Pike. And policy map there and outlined in the red, excuse me, that is all suburban neighborhood evolving. And as you can see around there, it's all suburban neighborhood evolving as well. The green area, that is going to be open space, and that is just heavy vegetation there, woods and whatnot. So the existing policy, as stated, is suburban neighborhood evolving. And as you can see on the map there, how it fits into the scope of the area, very large area, excuse me, very large policy area. You can see. And the requested policy is suburban neighborhood maintenance. You're looking at the images that I provided are that's the color of the neighborhood maintenance policy. As you can see how it would fit into the landscape of the area. And again, the intent of this policy is just to maintain the general existing character of the neighborhood. This is a further breakdown. You see for yourself outlined there in the red. Again, neighborhood evolving. Also see neighborhood maintenance policy. And how I like to think of it is the neighborhood maintenance policy, that is preservation. It's a neighborhood evolving policy that is adding greater housing variety, housing types in the area. So I apologize if I kind of sped through that little presentation there, but I just wanted to make sure I had, because there are 2 community members associated, I wanted to make sure that there's enough time for people to ask questions of these plan amendments. So I will open the floor up for questions and answers at this point.
Okay, so Corey, we had a question in the chat about explaining in more layman's terms. And so I did. I answered that in the chat, everybody, because just to recap what Corey's saying, in this case, this is the council person being proactive, coming to us and saying, hey, I think some characteristics, in the area have changed for the land use policy, which is guidance. That's that long range vision and what we use to determine when someone comes into our office and says, hey, I got this idea for my property, can I do it? The land use policy is what we use to determine, if someone, what they're asking for with zoning can be allowed or not. And so, in the first case, it's going from small mixed use area, what we call a neighborhood center, to residential that would match the property around it, keep it the same characteristics. And then for John Hager, it's going from suburban residential to rural residential, recognizing the large lots. And as the councilwoman said, the natural features, the farmland, those type things. And, oftentimes when we have these land use policy conversations, it's because a developer has proposed a change in zoning or property owners ask about changing the zoning. And that's why Corey was saying, in this instance, there are no zone changes associated with these. We're just talking about changing that long range vision.
So I think one of the questions that's in the chat is about what they're wanting to do, and there's no developer that is coming forward that's involved in any of this. I've referenced John Hager and Earhart, the developer. There was a developer that was interested in some property over there, and so what he was looking at doing was building a subdivision, but he found it very interesting that there was this neighborhood center identification there. And in speaking to him, and this has probably been about 2 years ago that this conversation happened, that he felt like it didn't make any sense just based on where kind of to what Corey was describing of a strip center or some kind of commercial activity right there, that it didn't make a lot of sense to have neighborhood center there because of the fact that it's already developed with Bridgewater. And then we get very close to the county line. And so that was kind of the interest there in that conversation from meeting with him several years ago about why is it neighborhood center and wouldn't it make more sense if we looked at changing it. And so on the Stewart's Ferry side, the idea is because it is a very unique street, to make it kind of match. It's got a very rural feel, the Cook Recreation Area conversation and the conversation just about TWRA and the Army Corps of Engineers property is there's never really going to be enough investment kind of in Stewart's Ferry Pike. You're never going to see like widening of Stewart's Ferry Pike or anything like that. Or a lot of as many street improvements as an area that's more densely populated. And because of the kind of continued concern that I've heard from some residents, not everybody, but some residents about, what's coming that direction or what could come in the future. It was my interest of let's have a conversation about should we kind of downgrade the plan a little bit to make it less enticing for potential development because of the messages that I've gotten in particular around that Cook Recreation Area time. So there's nobody's in the wings or anything trying to do anything. It really was, this is an opportunity for us to look at it, and we don't get these opportunities very often. And so I wanted to make sure that we had a chance for planning to review these two areas specifically, since they've stood out to me during my term as being different, and also in Stewart's Ferry, a unique area that I know a lot of people would like to try to preserve.
So I'm still answering some questions in the chat. Let me see if there's anything I haven't answered yet.
Anita, we do have a hand raised.
Sure. Let's hear from him, Sade. Thank you.
Pike, I strongly support the change to the rural maintenance category for the plan. I guess my big question is that doesn't change the zoning. We're zoned R15, I believe, here in this area, which allows people to put 2.5 houses per acre on their land, and we've had 4 houses went in on a 2-acre lot across the road from us. And then we have another 43 houses planned less than a quarter of a mile from where we live here that's already been approved by the Planning Commission. My question is what steps would this change to rural maintenance slow that down and give the Planning Commission pause in terms of approving those dense lots like that? And then secondly, what steps might be taken to actually change the zoning to a more rural type of a zoning category? Thanks for having this meeting, by the way. Appreciate it very much.
Yeah, you bet. Corey, I'll answer that one. So yes, oftentimes we hear people talk about rezonings and changing, what they're legally entitled to do with their land, but there's a whole nother area called subdivisions and subdivision regulations. So the short answer to your question, Greg, is you all would need to talk with Councilmember Evans about potentially rezoning some of that area to an agricultural district, such as AR2A, that's agriculture and residential at 2 dwelling units an acre, or I'm sorry, 1 dwelling unit per 2 acres. It's been a long Monday. Sorry about that. And so, yes, so if someone came in right now and, they ask about rezoning their property, we take a look at the land use policy. If somebody comes in and asks about subdividing their subdividing their property, we look at policy just for the main characters. So in other words, suburban, rural, urban, those kinds of things, downtown, and so somebody could potentially subdivide just like what some of you are saying your neighbors are doing. They're subdividing into 2 or 3 houses, based on how much acreage they have. And so, right. So someone that's looking to subdivide then has to meet the regulations. I always talk about it's a lot like the old Dragnet TV show, just the facts. It's very much, do you meet the regulations or not? If you do, it's checking off boxes and you subdivide, versus there's more nuances that go into rezonings with the land use policy and things. So potentially, changing the policy would make someone, it would help some with subdivisions in the sense of you have changed that transect, which means they go, you've changed from suburban to rural. So you go to another part of the subdivision regulations and have to meet a little more characteristics, but it doesn't stop people from getting smaller lots. So did that make sense?
It looks like your explanation made sense.
Yes, yeah, thank you very much. I was having a hard time unmuting myself.
Okay, thank you. I was seeing Corey's head nod, but then I'm like, uh-oh, is my laptop frozen? That was what I first feared.
No, we're good. Thank you.
Anita, here's the good question in the chat that I think would be good for you to answer. Can you please explain how the John Hager Earhart change would affect zoning decisions in the future if this were to go through?
Sure. So, up there, the policy right now is a neighborhood center. which small mixed use areas, we think about neighborhood centers is where you might stop for a gallon of milk on your way home, or you might have a bakery there, coffee shop, those kinds. And so what would happen with this policy change is that it would change from a small mixed use area to a residential area. So if someone came in then and said, hey, can I rezone and open up a bakery? No, you're looking at then housing, different types of housing that match somewhat of the surrounding character. It could be that somebody proposes something a little different that doesn't look exactly like their neighbors and things. So for that one, it's more straightforward in the sense of, still saying in that overarching category of suburban, going from suburban neighborhood center, a small mixed use area type policy to suburban residential. And then, it's like the surrounding residential area then.
Anita Mills Smith has their hand raised.
Yeah, and then I thought I saw Jim with a hand raised. I thought I'd seen somebody else.
He did, but he took it down.
Oh,
Oh,
okay. Go ahead,
well, I
Mel.
think he may have put it back up. So
Okay.
we'll we'll go with Mel, and then we'll go back to Jim. Mel, you should be able to unmute now.
For taking my question, and thanks for this meeting. I'm looking at a printout that was sent out to announce the meeting, and it's very helpful. The map of the Stewart's Ferry area, and I'm just trying to get my arms around what the land use policy change could mean. So, is it possible that all the areas along Stewart's Ferry that are highlighted in red, that if a developer or several developers wanted to build in the same density that currently exists in let's say the Cook's Landing area, the Cook's Landing development, could all the red areas in red end up looking like Cook's Landing eventually under the proposed plan amendment?
So I think, Mel, in that case, is Cook's Landing one of the smaller subdivisions, or is it that dead end street adjacent to the lake?
It's a built out subdivision off of Stewart's Ferry Pike.
Okay.
It's
So,
in the map. It's in the area of the map.
okay. I know that when we did the boundaries, we had cut around some of those existing subdivisions because their character today is suburban.
Right.
So it was like, well, they don't really need to change Transect because they're suburban. So yes, I think that was one of the things that prompted the request to study this area, was that today, with the policy like it is, property owners could come in and you would look to do something similar because that's all in the same policy. And so here, if the policy was changed to jumping from suburban down to a rural character and a rural residential, you would be looking at a different character. That's why it gets a little tricky because, rezoning, your list is very narrow if you're rural. If you're in a rural transect, a rural policy, and you want to rezone, your list is very narrow. If you want to subdivide, it's possible, if your zoning is still R15 and you're in a rural transect, you can still subdivide. The thing that becomes then is the focus comes on keeping that primary street still rural in character. So you would have to set back further off the street, or you would have to do landscaping buffer, but people could still subdivide. So that's why I was saying earlier that ideally property owners would rezone to a rural zoning like AR2A so that it would be more consistent in character.
Mm-hmm. So is the proposal to and I think I heard Aaron mentioned, is the proposal then to try to keep the areas that are in red to be more rural in nature than
Yes.
what's
Yes.
than say the Cook's Landing subdivision?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, that would be a good thing. Thank you. You've answered my question.
You're welcome. So let's go to Jim now. Okay, Jim.
Yes, I noticed in the development planner, an online planner a few weeks ago, that down at the end of Stewart's Ferry near 7 Points, the last parcel before we get to the core, there was a big development going to be there on 18 acres. And now I look at the tracker and it's not there. Has that been withdrawn? Or is it just missing from the tracker? Is that development still planned thing? And does it fit? Because it borders right on Stewart's Ferry, on the south side of Stewart's Ferry, I believe is where it was going to be. Does anyone know anything about that?
I don't, Jim. We'll need to look into that. So when Corey
It was
shares
pro-
his,
It was property owned by, I believe it was Mr. Hager, I believe he's one of the councilmen. And it was on the tracker. It wasn't any secret or anything. It was there. And
now, is that the one that was been in process for a while?
I don't know. The only place I knew of it was I saw it on the tracker. And now it's not on there. So I don't know. I was just curious about,
Yes,
what.
I believe, and Anita, I don't know how long it takes for things to fall off the tracker, but that was something that he had been through the planning process sometime last year to do a subdivision on that property.
Right. It can take a few weeks to fall off of development tracker. So in other words, that one's been through the process.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so it's still something will probably be there. And does it fit this changing this use policy have any effect on what it was going to be, or does it still fit in there?
That was a subdivision, correct? Yes. So no, it's going to fit more in suburban. It's going to fit more in the suburban
It was just like the previous. Okay, it's like the previous questioner was asking about Cook's Landing. Would it be something similar to that, and would making this use change, make it change what they're going to put there? Or
No, that one has already moved through the process. So even if we change the land use policy moving forward today, that one's already made it through the process. So it wouldn't change what
Okay.
they're allowed to do.
Okay, I was curious about that. And then just as an aside, when we're using the development tracker, most of the little circles you click on there always say no information available. Occasionally you'll find one that has one. So I'm just curious about that. I just wanted to bring it up and tell you that in case you weren't aware of it. I don't know.
No, Jim, sometimes that happens to me too, and you have to click on it again. Yeah. Now
Okay.
where sometimes it won't, like you click on something and it should give you the case details that pop up on the left-hand side of your screen. And sometimes when you click on that link to look at a site plan, it'll give you an error message, but that's because there's not a site plan for that rezoning. So that's like a common thing that people find.
Like where they're
But
building
yeah, keep on
the three
clicking.
houses. And like building the three houses now next to the old historic house there on Stewart's Ferry. It says no information, when I
Yeah,
click
zoom
it.
in a little bit and click.
This is a aside to tell everybody that. I know it's not
Yeah,
part of this.
zoom in a little bit more, and so when you zoom in enough, it'll go from a circle to the actual property, and then you
Okay.
can click. Yeah, then you can click on it. I think it's just being temperamental with where your mouse cursor is.
Okay. All right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thanks, Jim. So Chuck, we ready for Chuck? Go ahead, Chuck.
Oh, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I was just curious. So it sounds like it's kind of downgrading it. What this plan is to downgrade our status so that it's more suburban. Is that correct, or rural? I mean,
Yes, more rural.
okay. So where does that put us on the priority of our roads being repaired that are being damaged by all the current development that's taking place? Does that bump us down on the list because now we're more of a outside of the city limits, so we don't get as much priority?
That's a good question. And so Chuck, so to your point, and you're thinking of as subdivisions are built on Stewart's Ferry and there's damage from like the big heavy concrete trucks and things like that. So the way Metro looks at those roads when they're used for construction purposes is I can submit them for repaving, and they will look at repaving after the majority of the construction is complete. So I wouldn't say that they would look at this land use policy or this the community character manual to make determinations about paving. It would really be about the quality of the road at that point. And so as construction moves forward, then that's what would happen. If it's not me, it would be the next council person would have that in their to-do list as far as getting that work done. But it does take a little while because if you ever travel down Smotherman Lane or Earhart and Hesse Road, some of those projects, they take a long time to get done, and Metro will not pave until the bulk of the construction is complete. That's a good question.
So I see Robin's hand up.
Like to
Go
know
ahead.
if you guys make it more rural, will that affect our taxes? Will it make our taxes go down?
No, what they're looking for more property taxes is what your use is, but also what your zoning, what your existing zoning is. So I think over time, if you, with some things like if you said, oh yes, over time we're going from a more dense residential zoning to a rural agricultural zoning, then you might see a reduction in some property taxes over time. It just depends on, I think, holistically how the city's tax base is rising.
It looks like Mel's hand may be up again for another question.
Yes, thank you. There's a very good question in the chat by Austin Hahn, and I'd like that question to be addressed. And the question is there any reasoning behind not including the T3NE status to the same properties on Old Hickory Boulevard as shown on the map?
I can speak to that real quick. So when I was going through here looking at the boundaries, I just focused on Stewart's Ferry and the properties that had addresses listed for Stewart's Ferry. That being said, definitely it's not set in stone, but I want to say definitely look at adding more to our boundary, that is. Old Hickory right there, and properties, so forth in the area. And that was just the reason behind the boundary that you saw on the map that you were received in the mail.
Yeah, and to that question, I know whenever I had originally, when we went through this legislation process, planning was going based on what we turned in. And so that also has an impact on, what was evaluated at that point, because I'm pretty sure I only said Stewart's Ferry whenever I had an amendment included in the bill. So I think that's a good suggestion to incorporate.
And thank you for that question, Austin.
Yeah, I see Austin's hand up, so he may want to ask something else.
My other question is, what's the timeline for approval on this, or just laying everything out? And does the potential I would call it districting, but of the council, does that change anything on how this gets approved and what happened before that?
Corey, you want to talk about like existing schedule?
Yes, so for these plan amendments, Austin, they are scheduled to be heard before the planning commission April the 27th, which is a little over a month away. And as you know, also redistricting, that's I can't speak to it because I'm not involved in that process, but as I'm thinking, it shouldn't have any bearing on the plan amendments moving forward in the process.
Right. Right. I'm part of the redistricting outreach team. And right now we're not anticipating, we're juggling some moving parts right now. So stay tuned. But currently, right, with land use policy decisions, our planning commissioners, that volunteer body of 10 people make the final decision with land use policy. And so those could continue on. And do continue on even when council terms are coming to an end, and things like that as well. And so, that being heard at a public hearing at planning commission is also too dependent on if you all want to have another meeting, if you want to add some properties to it. So it doesn't have to be that date. It's just when we fill out an application, like in this case, the planning department was the applicant on behalf of the council member. And so there's just a targeted date there for planning commission public hearing, but that can always change based on, what we hear from the community about next steps.
Thank you for that clarification, because I was wondering that myself as far as if we'd be able to have a deferral if there's the interest in, engaging with the Old Hickory Boulevard property owners and kind of bringing them into the conversation, and also the idea of meeting in person. So that way, more people can hear that we're not able to join the webinar portion of the presentation. And so that's something I'll catch up, Corey, with you offline and figure that piece out. So I appreciate that insight.
Yeah, sure. We can do some more notices and bring some other people in. Definitely. Yeah. Okay, so I'm still seeing Chuck's hand up. Chuck, do you have another question?
I did. Yeah, I had a second part to the first question. So in addition to the sort of the priority on the roads, I was curious, with this downgrade to rural, does that also take us out of the running for priority on sidewalks along the roads as well?
So that's a good question too, and Anita may have more insight, but I'll tell you from my experience. So basically, the way NDOT prioritizes sidewalk construction is really the existing kind of like who is walking now and where are they walking to? Is it connecting them to transit? Those kinds of things. There's a lot of different variables. And so when developers are coming in and they're building these new projects, you'll often see that they're creating, a sidewalk section in front of their projects, and basically then planning prioritizes those areas to try to connect those pieces together. So my thought is, as far as Stewart's Ferry, it would take a really long time to get to Stewart's Ferry regardless. But you'll see, as some of these other already entitled projects move forward, they will have sections of sidewalk, which in the longer run makes it more appealing, because NDOT likes to connect, sections of sidewalk when they're out there. So I don't know that I would use sidewalks as a deterrent, I guess, from, considering this proposal, because I think there's just other parts of our neighborhoods that'll probably get more attention on sidewalks first before we get to Stewart's Ferry, if that makes sense.
So this downgrade doesn't impact the priority of the sidewalks for?
No, not in how they evaluate it, because I think because we don't have like bus service, out past, we don't have really any bus service that kind of comes deep into District 12 anymore. We're not connected to like the main Old Hickory Boulevard. There's not a lot, there's recreational walkers and, people going to use the lake and kind of walk on the trails and stuff around the area, but there's just not enough foot traffic and, other kinds of traffic. And it's more on the recreation side as opposed to like connecting people to get to their jobs and things. And so, yeah, it's not really going to have an impact on that.
Does this downgrade? I know you guys have been talking about the positive things, but does this downgrade put us on a lower priority for anything? Is there a reason why, if we get downgraded here, that the city's going to not give us the resources as far as police services or fire services or street sweeping or et cetera?
Mhm. That's a great question. So the only thing that immediately comes to mind, but I would say it's more of an overarching um, concern for our side of town in general is, if we have lower density, like NES, when we went through the tornado, one of the things I learned during that time period was like building new substations for a part of town. Like they look at that as a generational thing to build. And it really is based on, the more densely populated your community is, the more likely you are to have that level of improvement, come to your community to help increase that, connection for NES. And then the only also to that point is like if you look at fire hall service on our side of Hermitage, so we have the new fire station, that's a couple years old that's on Andrew Jackson Parkway. And so I've gotten a lot of feedback from residents that we should have something that's like deeper into the county, or closer to the county line. And so that's not something that's really bubbled to the top because of having that fire hall, that's on Andrew Jackson, and kind of the proximity between the fire hall at Andrew Jackson and then like the closest fire station in Wilson County. The fire department has a plan. Like if every single fire station, all the everybody was out, fighting fires around the city, and we had something happening, they even have a plan to connect to Wilson County if we needed support from another county. So those are the only things that stand out. Like if we're not adding more people, those are things that will continue to be just kind of on the wayside, that it may be, 20, 30 years before you see something like that come our way. But those are the only things that stand out. I don't know if anybody from planning has any other things to add from your input or your experience.
No, council member, those are the ones that came to my mind too.
Okay, that answered my question. Thank you.
And right now, I'm not seeing anybody else's hand up.
Yeah, see, there's one question in the chat. Are there any plans to run gas lines down Stewart's Ferry?
I haven't heard of any. But Robin, that's something I can take offline and see if I can find the answer out.
Right, that's something we necessarily wouldn't know. Okay, so any other questions people can think of? Austin, I see your hand up.
Yeah, who has the final say on this, and like what's that look like to persuade or dissuade them from doing this?
Well, one definite piece of input is like meetings like this, like what we're having tonight. So definitely, you can email Corey. Corey's going to share his contact information with everybody, and email your council member and everything too. Now, as far as like when you all just come to let's fast forward a few weeks and say, hey, we've heard from most everybody. Hey, we support this change. Let's move forward. And so you have a public hearing scheduled at the Planning Commission. then, you still can reach out to the commissioners too with comments. And then the commissioners would, staff writes a staff report to the commission, and then the commissioners make the final decision on land use policy changes. But that's why we always like to have so much input ahead of time, because we like to have a good understanding of what the community wants before we ever move forward at Planning Commission for the public hearing.
So is it correct to say that you guys propose a recommendation based on the feedback you gather?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, and everybody, I just put my, I'll read it for the folks that are on the phone, but my contact information, you can reach me by email at aaron.evans@nashville.gov. And then my cell number is 615-861-1282. It's 615-861-1282. So feel free to call me. Anybody that wants to can call me right after we're finished if you've got feedback you'd like to share. But otherwise, feel free to reach out if you've got something you want to share about this proposal. There's a question in the chat for those folks with properties along Old Hickory Boulevard. Will there be follow-up communications regarding whether or not there is inclusion of those properties in the new land use policy? I would say the answer is yes. And so I'll work with Corey and the planning team about what that will look like, and also the scheduling of something in person, because I'll be responsible for figuring out the location and everything, and working on that with Corey and the team.
Yep, sounds good. That's the last question I see in the chat, right? Corey shared his contact information for everyone.
Yeah, and everybody, it's for anybody on the phone, corey.clark@nashville.gov. And then it's his number is 615-862-7155. I assume he's going home after this and will probably not be available again till tomorrow. But his number again is 615-862-7155.
No, I'll be here if I'll be here for about 30 more minutes. So if anyone wants to give me a call here in the office or shoot me an email, I'll be here until 7:30. So feel free to drop me a line. And I think that is it. So I would like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I apologize earlier about my audio difficulties, my voice and whatnot. So I'll make sure to have that rectified next time we meet in person. Councilmember Evans, you want to leave us with any words?
I appreciate your time, and thank you for your work in putting this together and notifying everybody. I think there's a lot of interest in what the proposal is and folks that couldn't come. And so I appreciate your willingness to come out in person too. And we'll see what additional feedback, we get, and pro or con, and go from there. So thanks everybody that joined us tonight.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Anita. Any last words?
No, just want to thank everyone. Thanks for spending time with us. These changes are important, and so glad to see so many people joining us.
All right, and there we go. All right, everyone. Have a safe and wonderful evening, and be talking back to everyone soon.
Thank you, Corey. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.